Day 1. A man lies down on the ground and does not get up, not for a day, not for a month, but for 390 days on one side, then 40 more on the other, 430 days total on the ground, and the only thing he eats for the entire stretch is a single loaf of bread made from 6 ingredients. He doesn't waste away. He finishes exactly as strong as he started, and the recipe that kept him alive is still written down, word for word, in Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 9, 6 plants, mixed in one vessel, that modern nutrition science now recognizes as a complete protein on par with meat, eggs, or milk. No meat required, no dairy, no supplements. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's in that loaf, why the combination works at a biological level, and exactly how to bake it yourself, tonight in your own kitchen. Here's the short version of the man behind it, and then we'll get straight into the food. Ezekiel was a priest living among Jewish exiles in Babylon, sometime around 593 BC, after Jerusalem's people had been dragged from their homeland as judgment for turning away from God. God gave him an assignment that used his own body instead of words. Lie down for 390 days, representing Israel's years of sin, then 40 more for Judah's 430 days combined. For every single one of them, his entire diet was a measured ration of 1 loaf, roughly 10 ounces a day, plus a cup or 2 of water. That's the backstory. Now let's talk about what was actually in the bread, because that's where this gets genuinely interesting. The instruction God gave wasn't bake 6 loaves or eat these grains on alternating days. It was, put all 6 ingredients into one vessel together and make bread from the mixture. That detail carried real weight in ancient Israel. A wealthier household baked with pure wheat flour and nothing else. A mixed bag of grains and legumes, gathered a portion at a time from whoever had a little to spare that was the food of someone with nothing. A beggar combining scraps because no single ingredient was ever enough on its own. It doubled as a preview too. Jerusalem's coming siege would soon force the people trapped inside those walls to eat exactly this way, scraping together whatever they could find into a single pot. Have you ever had to cook dinner during a lean week, using whatever was scattered across the pantry, a little of this, a little of that, nothing on its own enough to make a full meal? That's essentially the exact picture behind this recipe. It was designed as the bread of poverty and scarcity, which makes it almost unbelievable that, gram for gram, it turns out to carry more usable protein than the food sitting on a wealthy family's table just streets away. So, let's actually look at what's going into this loaf, because the 6 ingredients themselves are where the real story is. These weren't 6 ingredients pulled at random from anywhere in the world. They were what actually grew in the hill country and lowlands of ancient Israel. Wheat and barley in the valleys. Lentils and beans as rotation crops that also happened to enrich depleted soil. Spelt in the hardier upland regions. Millet wherever the ground was too poor for anything else. The recipe wasn't only nutritionally complete, it was regionally realistic, built from exactly what a person in that place, at that time, could actually get their hands on. Wheat forms the backbone of the dough. Not the bleached, refined kind sitting in most bags of all-purpose flour today, but whole wheat, with the bran and the germ left fully intact. That's the exact part modern milling strips out first, and it's also where most of the fiber, iron, and B vitamins actually live. In Ezekiel's day, there was no such thing as refined flour at all. Every loaf was, by necessity, what we'd now call whole grain, a strange twist given how hard modern nutrition trends work to get people back to exactly that. Spelt is wheat's older, hulled cousin, common across the ancient Near East, long before modern bread wheat became the dominant crop. It brings a deeper, nuttier flavor that shows up the moment it hits a dough. Today, it's sold at 2 or 3 times the price of plain flour in the ancient grains aisle of a health food store. A strange fate for a grain that, in Ezekiel's time, simply meant ordinary bread. Barley is the grain most associated with the poor throughout the Old Testament, cheaper than wheat, tougher, able to grow in drier and saltier soil where wheat would fail. It's the grain behind the famous barley loaf in the story of Gideon, tumbling through the enemy camp as a symbol of the lowly overturning the powerful. Today, the vast majority of the world's barley crop goes into livestock feed or into malting for beer and whiskey. It rarely ends up in a loaf of bread at all anymore. Millet is the smallest of the 4 grains here, tiny golden seeds that turn faintly sweet once ground into flour. It thrived wherever soil was too dry or too poor for wheat, and it still feeds hundreds of millions of people today across parts of Africa and Asia. Even if in the West, it's better known as birdseed than as bread flour. Have you ever picked up a bag of a grain you didn't recognize at the store and had no idea what to actually do with it? Millet is probably the most common example of exactly that, sitting quietly in the health food section while most shoppers walk right past it. The United Nations actually dedicated an entire year in recent memory to raising awareness specifically about millet's nutrition and drought resistance. It's not just which grains changed over the centuries, it's how they were processed. Ezekiel's flour would have come from a hand quern, 2 flat stones grinding grain into a coarse, uneven meal that kept the bran and germ mixed straight through it. Modern industrial milling, even for flour labeled whole wheat, often separates the grain into its parts, first bran, germ, endosperm, before recombining them, and small amounts of the nutrient-dense germ can get lost or degraded along the way. Grinding your own grain at home, coarse and a little imperfect, is oddly closer to the ancient method than most bread you'll find on a store shelf today. Then come the legumes, and this is genuinely where most of the protein magic happens. Lentils, the same lentils. Esau famously traded his birthright, for in the book of Genesis get ground into a fine flour here, and they're rich in exactly the amino acid. The 4 grains above are short on lysine. Beans, whether kidney, pinto, chickpea or Great Northern, do the same job, rounding out what the grains can't cover by themselves. Dried lentils and beans have their own quiet history worth knowing, too. They were among the easiest foods in the ancient world to store through a bad season. They don't spoil quickly, they travel well, and they rehydrate into something filling with nothing more than water and thyme. That's part of why they were a beggar's ingredient of choice in the first place. Not because they were low value, but because they were dependable when almost nothing else was. Have you ever noticed how often grains and legumes show up paired together across totally unrelated cuisines? Rice and beans, hummus and pita, lentils and rice across the Middle East and South Asia. That's not coincidence or tradition for tradition's sake. The same principle shows up in Mesoamerican cooking with corn and beans, and in East Asian cooking with rice and soy. It's the exact same nutritional logic baked into this one loaf, arrived at independently by cultures with no way of knowing why it worked, only that it did. Wherever people needed to survive without relying on meat, the same basic grain plus legume math kept reappearing. Here's one more layer worth knowing, especially since it connects directly to how this bread is often made today. Many modern Ezekiel bread-style loaves use sprouted grains and legumes rather than plain dried ones, letting the seeds germinate slightly before grinding. Sprouting breaks down phytic acid, a compound naturally present in grains and legumes, that otherwise binds up minerals like iron and zinc and makes them harder for your body to absorb. It also activates enzymes that start breaking starches down into simpler, more digestible forms. Ancient bakers had no name for any of this, but grain stored in a damp jar for a day or two before grinding would often have started sprouting anyway, purely by accident, meaning Ezekiel may have gotten an extra nutritional boost simply because airtight, moisture-free storage didn't exist yet. Now here's where these 6 ingredients actually earn the complete protein label, and it comes down to biology, not tradition. Protein is built from 20 smaller building blocks called amino acids, and 9 of them are essential. Your body cannot manufacture them itself, so everyone has to come from food. A grain on its own tends to fall short on one of them, lysine. A legume on its own tends to fall short on a different one, methionine. Eaten separately, either one leaves a gap, and that gap matters for more than muscle alone. Those same amino acids are the raw material for enzymes, for hormones, and for the antibodies your immune system runs on, which is part of why a shortfall doesn't just show up as weakness. It shows up as a body that struggles to heal, fight off illness, or regulate itself properly. Exactly the kind of breakdown you'd expect from someone lying still for months at a time. Have you ever picked up a protein bar or a tub of powder, checked the label, and genuinely wondered whether complete protein was real science or just marketing language? Here's the actual definition. A complete protein is any food or combination of foods that delivers all 9 essential amino acids in meaningful amounts. Meat, eggs, and dairy do this naturally, on their own. Most individual plant foods don't, but paired correctly, they can. This isn't new science either. Researchers were mapping out exactly this kind of protein complementation by the mid-20th century, and by 1971, it was mainstream enough that a book called Diet for a Small Planet built an entire eating philosophy around pairing grains and legumes at the same meal. Later, research softened that rule slightly. Your body actually holds a rolling reserve of amino acids across the day, so hitting the perfect combination in one sitting isn't strictly necessary. But Ezekiel's bread never needed that correction in the first place. It solves the problem before you take a single bite, because wheat, barley, millet, and spelt hand you one part of the amino acid puzzle, and the ground lentils and beans hand you the rest, already combined in the very same loaf. Now for the numbers, because this is where it gets specific enough to actually matter. A thick slice of this bread, made with all 6 ingredients exactly as described, carries around 16 grams of protein. 2 or 3 slices close to what Ezekiel's own daily ration would have amounted to puts you ahead of a comparable serving of steak in raw protein, minus the saturated fat that clogs arteries over the decades, minus the cholesterol load, minus a grocery bill that keeps climbing every year. Meat prices go up, and the cost difference is real. Not just historical 6 cups of grains and a handful of dried legumes costs a small fraction of what an equivalent amount of protein from meat runs at any grocery store today. The poor man's bread label was never really about lacking nutrition. It was about lacking the right information. Protein is only half the story. A single serving carries around 15 grams of fiber, more than most adults get across an entire day. Largely because most modern bread has had its fiber milled out before it ever reaches a shelf. This loaf hasn't lost any of it. That fiber does 3 things at once. It feeds the bacteria in your gut that keep digestion and immunity running properly. It slows how fast sugar hits your bloodstream, so you avoid the spike and crash that sends you reaching for a second coffee by mid-afternoon. And it keeps your digestive system moving the way it's supposed to. Layer in the iron, zinc, magnesium, and B vitamins naturally present across 6 whole ingredients. Zinc supporting immune function and wound healing. Magnesium supporting muscle and nerve function. B vitamins driving the energy production your cells run on hour to hour. And you start to understand how one loaf, built from what a beggar could scrape together, was enough to keep a body running for 430 days straight. It's worth noting this is a very different approach from most high-protein breads showing up on shelves today, which often hit their numbers by blending in isolated pea protein or whey powder rather than whole food ingredients. This bread gets there entirely from 6 ingredients you could recognize and pronounce, with nothing isolated or added. Compare that to a typical slice of modern white sandwich bread. Once the bran and germ are milled away, you're generally left with somewhere around 2 to 3 grams of protein a slice and less than a gram of fiber, a fraction of what this 6-ingredient loaf delivers from a product that, on the label, still just says bread. There's also a practical, everyday reason. The difference matters beyond the raw numbers. Bread built from whole grains and legumes together digests far more slowly than bread from refined flour alone, thanks to that same fiber and protein working in combination. That means a gentler rise in blood sugar after eating rather than the sharp spike refined carbohydrates tend to cause a steadier release of energy that would have mattered enormously to a man whose only fuel for over a year was exactly this loaf. It's worth sitting with this for a second. Every one of these 6 ingredients, once the unmistakable mark of poverty, has quietly been rebranded as a premium health food in the last few decades. If you've ever wandered the freezer aisle of a health food grocery store, there's a real chance you've already seen this exact bread without knowing what you were looking at. A commercial loaf made from sprouted wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt has been sold for years under the name Ezekiel 4:9 bread, named directly after this verse. The ingredients never stopped working. Only their reputation changed. Back on the ground, Ezekiel had no idea any of this science existed. He just knew. The bread kept him functioning for 430 consecutive days without once losing his grip on the assignment. We live in a completely different world, and yet have you ever stood in a supplement aisle staring at a $40 tub with an ingredient list so long you gave up halfway through reading it, wondering if you were paying for nutrition or just paying for marketing? Have you ever cut one food group out of your diet for even a week and found yourself foggy and running out of steam by day 3? Ezekiel had 6 ingredients and water, repeated without variation, and he outlasted something most of us couldn't get through in a single week. By now you know why it worked. Here's exactly how to build the same loaf in your own kitchen, in roughly the same proportions. God gave a starving prophet 26 centuries ago. One quick note before we start. Flour begins losing nutrients the moment it's ground, since the oils in the germ start to oxidize almost immediately. Grinding your own barley and legumes fresh, right before mixing the dough, gets you closer to what this bread actually was in Ezekiel's time than flour that's been sitting in a bag for months. Most of these ingredients are easier to find today than you'd expect. 2 whole wheat and spelt flour sit on most grocery store shelves now, and barley, millet, dried lentils, and dried beans are usually in the bulk or grain aisle, or the international foods section if not. A basic blender or a coffee grinder, kept just for grains, handles the grinding for anything you can't find pre-milled. Worth remembering as you do it. Preparing all this by hand in Ezekiel's time took considerably longer than it does now. Grinding 6 different grains and legumes by hand, quern alone could take the better part of an hour before the dough was even started. A blender collapses that same step into a few minutes. Start with the grains, since they make up the base of the loaf. 2½ cups of whole wheat flour, not white, not all-purpose. The whole grain with the bran and the germ left fully intact, exactly the part most modern flour has had stripped out of it. 1½ cups of spelt flour, with a deep, nutty flavor. You'll notice the moment it hits the dough. 1/2 cup of barley flour, or take whole barley and run it through a blender for about a minute. If you can't find it, pre-ground the grain of shepherds and farmers, the grain of ordinary people across all of ancient Israel. And 1/4 cup of millet, small golden seeds that add a light, faintly sweet note once they're ground down. Next, the legumes, and this is where most of the protein in the loaf actually comes from. Notice the ratio here, 2 far more grain by volume than legume, and that's not arbitrary. Grains alone can't complete the amino acid profile, but they don't need to be matched cup for cup with legumes to fix that. A smaller, concentrated amount of ground lentils and beans is enough to fill in exactly what the 4 grains are missing. 1/4 cup of dried lentils ground into a fine flour. 2 tablespoons of dried kidney beans or pinto beans ground the same way. And 2 tablespoons of dried chickpeas or Great Northern beans, also ground fine. All 3 take about a minute each in a blender. Grind until the texture is a true powder, with no chunks left over, since chunks of dried legume won't bake evenly into the crumb. If spelt isn't available, more whole wheat can stand in for it, though you'll lose some of that distinct nutty flavor. If Great Northern beans aren't on hand, navy beans work just as well nutritionally. Round it out with 1 teaspoon of sea salt, 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, 2 tablespoons of raw honey, 1½ cups of warm water warm enough to wake the yeast, not hot enough to kill it, and 2 teaspoons of active yeast. If you'd rather skip the yeast entirely, you can bake this as a dense, unleavened flatbread instead, which is likely closer to how Ezekiel himself made it given his circumstances. Both versions are authentic. Both are worth trying at least once. None of these last few additions are modern flourishes, either. Honey and olive oil were both staples of the ancient Mediterranean and Levant diet. Honey is one of the only concentrated sweeteners available before refined sugar existed at any scale. Olive oil is the primary fat across the whole region, used for cooking, preserving, and even lamp fuel. In this bread specifically, the oil keeps a dense, legume-heavy dough from drying out during the long bake, and the honey feeds the yeast just enough to help a heavy dough actually rise. Salt does more than season here. Too, it tightens the gluten structure in the wheat and spelt, and slows the yeast down just enough to keep it from working too fast in a dough. This dense. Here's how it all comes together. Combine you every dry ingredient in one bowl: the whole wheat, the spelt, the barley, the millet, the ground lentils, the ground beans, and the salt, and stir until everything is evenly mixed. Don't worry that the color looks dark and the texture looks coarse. That's exactly right. In a separate bowl, stir together the warm water, the olive oil, and the honey. Add the yeast, stir it in gently, and leave the bowl alone for 10 minutes. You're watching for foam and bubbles across the surface. That's the yeast waking up and telling you it's ready to work. Once it's foamy, pour the wet mixture into the dry ingredients and stir until a shaggy dough comes together. Turn it out onto a floured surface and knead it by hand for 10 minutes. Push the dough away from you, fold it back over itself, give it a quarter turn, and repeat. There's something almost meditative about this part. You're doing, with your own hands, exactly what people have done with this exact bread for thousands of years. If the dough feels stickier than a normal bread dough, resist the urge to add much extra flour. A mix this dense, loaded with ground legumes, naturally wants to feel tackier than a plain wheat dough, and too much extra flour just leaves the finished loaf dry. A light dusting on your hands is usually enough. Once it's kneaded, place the dough in a lightly oiled bowl, cover it with a clean towel, and set it somewhere warm for 1 to 2 hours, until it's roughly doubled in size. When it's ready, turn it back out onto a floured surface, shape it into a round or oval loaf, and press seeds into the top if you'd like: sesame, sunflower, pumpkin. The same way, bread was often decorated across ancient Israel. Set the shaped loaf onto a greased baking sheet or into a loaf pan and let it rise once more. For about an hour, bake it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 to 50 minutes. You're looking for a crust that has gone a deep golden brown and feels firm under your fingers. Tip the loaf out and tap the bottom of it. It should sound hollow. If it still sounds dense and dull, give it another 5 minutes in the oven. Let it cool completely before you cut into it. The inside of the loaf is still finishing its structure as it cools, and slicing too early collapses everything the baking process just built. Once fully cooled, it keeps well wrapped at room temperature for a couple of days, or sliced and frozen for much longer. Given how dense and filling it is, a single loaf realistically stretches across several days of eating, not unlike how Ezekiel's own daily ration was designed to work in the first place. What you'll taste when you finally cut into it is nothing like anything from a normal bakery shelf. The wheat and spelt give it an earthy, substantial base. The barley and millet add a light, faintly sweet undertone beneath that. The lentils and beans bring a real chewiness you can feel, distinct from what plain wheat bread gives you on its own. There's a quiet sweetness underneath everything, courtesy of the honey, present but never loud. The crust pushes back a little when you bite through it, with real presence. The whole kitchen fills with a warm, slightly toasted, nutty smell while it bakes, distinct from the plain, yeasty sweetness of a white loaf. That smell comes specifically from the barley and legumes browning gently in the heat. Because it's dense and low in refined starch, it holds up well as toast without falling apart, and a couple of slices with just a little butter or nut butter tend to be far more filling than the same amount of a standard sandwich loaf. This isn't bread built for convenience. It's bread built for sustenance, out of 6 plain ingredients, doing more nutritional work together than almost anything else on a modern shelf. 6 ingredients. 1 vessel. 1 loaf. Designed for a man who needed something that would keep his body running for over a year with nothing else to eat. And it did exactly that for all 430 days. Modern nutrition science took 2,500 years to catch up to a single verse that had been sitting in plain sight the entire time, not as a novelty, not as a health food label gimmick, but as proof that even the plainest ingredients, combined the right way, can carry a person through what should have been impossible. So gather your 6 ingredients. Grind your grains, grind your legumes, put them into 1 vessel, and bake the same bread that carried a prophet through the hardest year of his life. It was enough for Ezekiel. It will be enough for you too. If this video opened up something for you, send it to somebody who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment and tell us, are you actually going to bake this bread? Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We're here every single week, digging into scripture most people scroll straight past. And genuinely, thank you for staying with us all the way to the end of this one. It means more than you probably know. We'll see you in the next video.